What if the food you have been eating every single morning, the food your doctor told you was good for your heart, the food the television commercials told you was healthy, the food the government nutrition guidelines said you should eat more of? What if that exact food has been quietly, systematically, and scientifically increasing your risk of a heart attack for years? I know that sounds impossible. I know it sounds like the kind of thing people say to get attention. But I am not here for attention. I am here because the evidence is real. The research is published. And what I am about to share with you today is something that has taken the cardiovascular medical community years to fully confront, and something that most patients still have not been told. My name is Dr. Kame William. I am a cardiologist, and I have been practicing cardiovascular medicine for over 20 years.
In that time, I have seen thousands of patients, men and women, who did everything right. They exercised, they did not smoke, they reduced red meat. They ate the foods that every official health body told them were heart healthy. And yet they sat in my office with elevated inflammatory markers, stiffening arteries, rising LDL particle counts, and in far too many cases they eventually had heart attacks. And when we sat down together and went through exactly what they were eating, a pattern emerged that I could no longer ignore. A pattern that pointed directly at a category of food that has been marketed to the public as heart healthy for decades. And that food, the one I am talking about, is refined vegetable oil, specifically seed oils. I need you to stay with me here because I know those words might not mean much to you yet. Seed oils, canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil. These are the cooking oils that fill supermarket shelves. These are the oils used in virtually every packaged food, every restaurant fryer, every processed snack, every bottled salad dressing, every margarine, every commercial baked good you have ever eaten. These are the oils that replaced butter and animal fats in the Western diet starting in the 1970s and 1980s, because scientists and government health authorities told us that saturated fat caused heart disease and that polyunsaturated vegetable oils were a heart-healthy replacement. And in the decades since that recommendation was made, the decades during which seed oil consumption has increased by over 1,000% in the Western world, rates of heart disease have not fallen. They have risen. Obesity has risen. Metabolic disease has risen. Chronic inflammation has risen. And I am standing here today as a cardiologist, telling you that the connection is not a coincidence. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. He was 58 years old, a retired school teacher, a man who had been meticulously health-conscious his entire adult life. He used only canola oil and sunflower oil for cooking, because that is what his doctor recommended. He ate margarine instead of butter. He bought low-fat, heart-healthy labelled products from the supermarket. He had a bowl of granola every morning made with sunflower oil. He never ate fast food. He walked 5 days a week. His cholesterol numbers on the standard lipid panel looked reasonable. And then, one morning, Thomas had a heart attack. He survived. And when I reviewed his case, what struck me most was not his cholesterol numbers. It was his inflammatory markers, his oxidized LDL levels, his omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. These were the numbers telling the real story of what was happening inside his arteries, and they pointed directly at decades of seed oil consumption. Here is the science that most people have never been told, and I want to explain this in a way that is completely clear, because understanding it changes everything. Seed oils, canola, sunflower, soybean, corn oil, are extraordinarily rich in a type of fat called omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids, specifically linoleic acid. Now, the human body needs some omega-6 fatty acids. They are essential. The problem is not the presence of omega-6 fats, It is the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats in the diet. In natural traditional diets throughout human history, this ratio was approximately 1:1, equal parts omega-6 and omega-3. Today, in the modern Western diet, this ratio is estimated to be between 15:1 and 25:1. Some estimates put it even higher, and the reason is seed oils, which are consumed in massive quantities at every meal, in virtually every processed food, in every restaurant, without most people having any awareness of it. The human cardiovascular system was not designed for this ratio, and what happens when it is chronically exposed to this ratio is at the very heart of the heart disease epidemic we are living through. Omega-6 linoleic acid is biologically highly unstable. Unlike saturated fats, which are chemically stable and resistant to heat damage, polyunsaturated omega-6 fats are highly susceptible to oxidation. They oxidize when exposed to heat, they oxidize when exposed to light, they oxidize when exposed to air, and the production process for seed oils, which involves extremely high heat, chemical solvents, and industrial deodorization, subjects these fragile fats to exactly the kind of processing that generates oxidized lipid compounds, aldehydes, and trans fat byproducts, even before the oil reaches a supermarket shelf. Then you take that already compromised oil and you heat it in your frying pan at home, and the oxidation compounds multiply dramatically. Aldehydes like 4-hydroxynonenal and acrolein are produced in measurable quantities in heated seed oils. These compounds, when consumed, enter the bloodstream and directly attack the endothelial lining of the arteries. They oxidize LDL cholesterol particles, turning normal LDL into the small, dense, oxidized LDL that is the specific form of cholesterol actually responsible for plaque formation in arterial walls. Standard cholesterol blood tests do not measure oxidized LDL. Your doctor may tell you your cholesterol looks fine, while your arteries are silently accumulating the very plaque that leads to heart attacks. This is not fringe science. A study published in the British Medical Journal analysing the data from the Minnesota Coronary Experiment, a large controlled trial conducted in the 1960s and 1970s, but whose full data was suppressed for decades, found that replacing saturated fat with vegetable oil did reduce LDL cholesterol, but it significantly increased mortality. The group eating more vegetable oil had a higher rate of death from cardiovascular events than the group eating more saturated fat, despite having lower cholesterol numbers. This data was hidden for over 40 years. The researchers who finally published it in 2016 described the finding as a result that was deeply inconvenient for the prevailing dietary hypothesis. Deeply inconvenient. That is a scientific way of saying, this is not what we expected, and it challenges everything the public has been told for 50 years. Let me talk about inflammation, because inflammation is the mechanism through which seed oils damage the heart, and understanding it makes the entire picture clear. Omega-6 fatty acids are the precursor to pro-inflammatory signaling molecules called arachidonic acid derivatives, including prostaglandins and leukotrienes, which are the biochemical mediators of inflammation throughout the body. A diet chronically high in omega-6 from seed oils keeps the body in a state of low-grade, systemic, chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is the central driver of atherosclerosis, the build-up of plaque in arterial walls that causes heart attacks and strokes. It is chronic inflammation that makes arterial plaques unstable and prone to rupturing. It is chronic inflammation that triggers the clotting cascade that turns a plaque rupture into a fatal blockage. The connection between seed oil consumption, omega-6 dominance, systemic inflammation, and cardiovascular disease is mechanistically coherent, biologically consistent, and increasingly supported by research evidence. And yet the vegetable oil industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars globally, has successfully maintained its heart-healthy marketing position for decades, in part through funding research that supports its products, and in part through the remarkable inertia of official dietary guidelines that are extraordinarily slow to change. I want to come back to Thomas, because after his heart attack we had a long conversation. We went through everything, his diet in specific detail. And when I explained what I have just explained to you, he looked at me with a kind of stunned disbelief and said, "But I was doing everything right." And that is the cruelest part of this story. He was doing everything he had been told was right. He was following the official advice. He was buying the heart-healthy labeled products, and those products were contributing to the arterial inflammation that put him in a cardiac ward. Changing his diet after that conversation, removing seed oils, replacing them with stable, traditional fats, was one of the most powerful interventions I have made in any patient's cardiovascular care. Within a year, his oxidized LDL had dropped significantly. His inflammatory markers had improved substantially. His arterial health, measured by different and more comprehensive biomarkers, was demonstrably better. So what do you actually do with this information? What do you cook with instead? What do you eat instead? Because I am not here to frighten you without offering a path forward. The answer, perhaps surprisingly, involves going back to the fats that humans ate for thousands of years before the seed oil revolution of the 20th century. Butter from grass-fed cows, extra virgin olive oil used at low to medium heat, coconut oil, beef tallow and lard, the animal fats that our grandparents used and that were demonized without sufficient evidence, ghee, avocado oil at high heat. These are the stable fats. These are the fats that do not oxidize easily when heated. These are the fats that do not generate toxic aldehyde compounds in your frying pan. These are the fats that traditional cultures around the world, cultures with historically low rates of heart disease, have used throughout recorded history. The Mediterranean diet, which is consistently associated with excellent cardiovascular outcomes, does not use seed oils. It uses extra virgin olive oil, a monounsaturated fat that is structurally far more stable than the polyunsaturated seed oils, and it includes butter, cheese, eggs, and fish. The protective element of the Mediterranean diet is not the absence of fat, it is the presence of the right kinds of fat and the complete absence of industrial seed oils. I also want to address something that I know some of you are thinking, but what about all the studies that say vegetable oils are heart healthy? And this is where I need to speak very carefully and honestly. Many of the studies supporting seed oils compared them to saturated fat in the context of LDL cholesterol reduction. And yes, seed oils do reduce total LDL cholesterol compared to saturated fat. But LDL cholesterol is not the full story. Total LDL is a blunt instrument. What matters is LDL particle size and oxidation, and seed oils increase small dense oxidized LDL particles, the most dangerous form. What also matters is the inflammatory environment of the arteries, and seed oils promote it. And what matters most is actual cardiovascular outcomes, actual heart attacks and deaths, not surrogate markers like cholesterol numbers. And when you look at the studies that measured actual outcomes rather than cholesterol numbers, the picture is very different from what the vegetable oil industry wants you to see. Here is something practical that I want every person watching this to do today. Go to your kitchen cupboard. Look at every cooking oil, every packaged food, every spread, every sauce, every snack. Read the ingredient labels. Any product containing canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, or simply vegetable oil. that product is loading your body with oxidized omega-6 fats at every meal. You do not have to throw everything out today. But I want you to see how pervasive this is. I want you to see how completely seed oils have colonized the modern food supply, in amounts that no human body in all of history has ever been exposed to before the 20th century. And then I want you to start, one product at a time, replacing them. Replace your cooking oil with extra virgin olive oil for low and medium heat, cooking and avocado oil for high heat. Replace commercial margarine with real butter, preferably from grass-fed sources. Replace commercial salad dressings with olive oil and lemon or vinegar. When you eat out, ask what oil the food is cooked in. And if the answer is vegetable oil or canola oil, order something that is not fried. When you buy packaged foods, choose products with fewer than 5 ingredients, and none of them should be seed oils. This is not a perfect system. Seed oils are almost impossible to avoid entirely in the modern world. But reducing your consumption by 70 or 80%, which is achievable with conscious effort, produces a meaningful reduction in the oxidized LDL burden and inflammatory load that your cardiovascular system carries every day. I want to say one more thing before I close, and it is about trust. Many of you watching this have trusted the official nutritional advice your whole lives. You trusted the heart-healthy labels. You trusted the government guidelines. You trusted the products that came recommended by medical associations whose logos appeared on the packaging. And I understand why. That trust is reasonable. That trust is appropriate. But science evolves. Evidence accumulates. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, the consensus turns out to have been built on incomplete data, on industry-influenced research, on the suppression of inconvenient findings. The seed oil story is one of those times. And as a cardiologist, my obligation is not to protect the dietary status quo. My obligation is to protect your heart. And protecting your heart today means telling you the truth about seed oils, even when that truth is inconvenient, even when it contradicts what you have been told for 50 years, and even when the vegetable oil industry would very much prefer I said something else. Thomas called me 6 months after our follow-up appointment. He said his energy had improved dramatically. He said the mild chronic inflammation he had lived with for years, the joint stiffness, the low-level fatigue had significantly reduced. He said he had switched to butter, olive oil and grass-fed beef tallow. He said he had not bought a single product containing canola or sunflower oil in 6 months. And he said, "I only wished someone had told me this 30 years ago. You have been told. Now it is your turn to tell someone else. Share this video because somewhere in your life there is someone eating a granola bar for their heart health right now. And they deserve to know what you just learned. I am Dr. Kame William. The truth about your heart matters more than any food industry's marketing budget. Take care of what pumps the life through you.